All right, guys, so we got this motor hooked up pretty well. We got a new battery for it. And I got Nick sitting here in the driver's seat. And we hooked up the intake air temperature sensor here. We don't have the cold air intake hooked up, but we got the sensor hooked up so we don't get a check engine light on it. We do not have the O2 sensor hooked up. It's hooked up in the box, but it's not in the exhaust because we don't have the mid pipe. But we're going to try to start this thing, and we're going to see what happens. I'm just curious if it'll run or not. So when I tell Nick to hit the key, I'm going to spray a little bit of brake clean in here just to give it a little bit of a boost in case. We don't know what kind of fuel's in the fuel tank. We dumped 5 gallons of good fuel in there, but we don't know what kind of fuel's in the fuel tank. So I'm going to spray a little bit in this thing, and we're going to see what happens when Nick hits the key. All right, Nick, hit it. Let's see what happens. Try it again. See if it'll start on its own now. Give it some gas. Well, it's running, but it seems like it's only running whenever I'm spraying brake clean into the intake. So I'm not sure if it's got a problem with the fuel or what's going on with it, but you guys did hear it run. Let's try it one more time, Nick. Let's see if it'll start on its own. Put the gas pedal all the way down. Yeah. Okay. Try it again. Yeah, it's not wanting to run. Not wanting to run unless I spray brake clean into it, but it does run. You guys heard it start, so we know it runs. Sounds badass, and we'll just have to see what happens from here. So we got to try to figure that out. Obviously, there's a problem. I got a feeling the fuel pump's probably not getting a signal, but we'll have to see. That's computer work, and I don't know anything about that. That's Nick's forte there. So we'll keep working on it, and when we get it to run good, we'll make another video of that. Thanks. All right, guys, we're back on the MR2 here. I want to show you some things we've done to it in the past few hours. Give you a shot of it underneath, the way it looks. There's the new axles that come with the kit, I believe. They're in place. We got the suspension all hooked up. A couple things I wanted to show you under here. This is the AC compressor that is the Toyota one that was on the Toyota engine. So we've got it installed. It's actually all hooked up. These lines here that come underneath the car, you're going to have to finagle them a little bit, bend them, twist them to make them fit. We got them zip tied to the bottom of the compressor here. And up here, this top line here, I had to push up on it to bend it upward so this line wouldn't be hanging down so far. This line, I'd like to get it to go upward a little bit too, but this piece of aluminum line here is so short, I'm afraid I'm going to collapse it if I bend it, so I can't get it to bend. So I left it alone, but it's okay. One other modification you're going to have to make is, let's go over here to the driver's side. You've got a brace that runs from your trailing arm mount over to the body right here, and your emergency brake cable is attached to it, and it runs inward like that. Well, on this side here, once you do this modification, this brace would normally mount back in there where that bolt hole is, right there where my finger's pointing. But you can't get it to go past the compressor because the compressor is relocated. So what I did is I drilled a 1/2-inch hole through the floor pan right here, and then I put a bolt up through this hole and got a magnet and fished it back down through this hole and mounted this brace going this way. So instead of going inward, it's coming outward. So that's another modification you have to make this work. You could leave the brace off, I guess, if you wanted to, but you know, it's there for a purpose. So I decided just to do it that way. It's still going to do its job fairly well. And it works fine. This cable here is, you know, it's kind of close to the belt, but it's fine. So, you know, it's going to be okay. One concern I have, and I guess a lot of people made concerns about, as you can see, the header is below the level of the oil pan, which means if you drive over a speed bump or anything in this car, your header is going to be the first thing to hit. So you guys need to be aware of that. If you're building one of these cars, you probably should avoid speed bumps, because if you don't, you may damage your header, and of course they're expensive. So it'd be nice if the people that manufacture this header, you can see it when it comes down, it kind of comes in a downward angle. It'd be nice if it came and went straight out instead of down, because if it went straight out, it would probably be up in this area here. You'd have another 1.5 inches or so of clearance on it. But you know, it is what it is. I mean, you might be able to put something underneath here and try to jack up on it and bend it a little bit, but I'm not going to do that. So you just have to be careful when you drive it, and make sure that you avoid speed bumps, because you're going to have problems if you don't. All right, now here's the big issue with this thing I want to show you. Okay, so the clutch, the slave cylinder is right there, and there's a line that comes within the kit. That's a flexible stainless steel line that comes, and we've got it run around, and we've got it connected right here to the factory clutch line. Now this here in my hand, let me show you this. Originally, hold on, get this thing in place here. Originally, this line here went up right there and basically sat in the same place where that connector is. And it ran down and over and then back up to here. And then we had the flexible line connected to this line first, but it kept leaking, it wouldn't seal. And I took it apart and looked at it, and here's what the problem is with this thing. I want to get out here where I can show you guys this. And this really needs to be corrected by the guy that designed this kit. See if I can get this thing to focus on this fitting. There we go. So that fitting is a flare fitting. It is typical for most brake lines, or, you know, hydraulic lines for clutches and things like that. Now this fitting here that was mounted on the fireless factory fitting here, if you look inside of it, it has a flare fitting that flares out towards the outside of the fitting, which means this fitting here, again, trying to get it to focus, there we go. This fitting here fits inside that flare, okay? So this is a female flare that goes over the top of, if I can get this thing to focus again, come on. There we go. It goes over the top of that fitting there. You see the male fitting sticking out inside where the threads are at the bottom of the hole. There's a male fitting sticking out. That's the type of fitting that should be on that flexible line, but it's a female as well. And you're putting a female to a female, it's not going to seal. So what I ended up doing, this one here, we couldn't get it to seal because it's kind of rough on the end. So what I ended up taking this line here loose from this fitting, and I took emery cloth and I sanded the end of the line till it was flat and smooth, and then I bolted these together. Again, this one's a female, this one's a female, so you're putting a female to a female, which isn't right, but it's not leaking at this point. But what really needs to happen is this flexible line here needs to have a male fitting on the inside of it, a male flare, not a female. So that definitely needs to be corrected. And you guys that have done this in the past, that have these cars that you've already put this kit on, if you have problems with this thing leaking, that's why. You need to contact the guy who makes this kit and ask him to send you the revised version of that, because that's not correct. It needs to be revised. I don't know if he's going to do it or not, but you know, I feel it's important to point it out, because if that fails and you're driving and you push in the clutch and you can't stop your car and you hit somebody and hurt somebody, then you're in trouble. So that needs to be fixed, because that's a safety issue as far as I'm concerned. Anyhow, so that's where we're at with this thing. I'll give you kind of a shot. Oh, also the radiator hose that was recommended by someone on the MR2 boards. We didn't really need it. We just took one of the original radiator hoses from the car, from the Toyota engine, and just cut it down, and it fits right in there really well. I mean, it's not perfect. It's got a little bit of little bit of a kink to it here, but it's not enough that it's going to affect flow, so it'll be fine. So you don't have to buy that hose. If you've got the original hoses that came on the Toyota engine, you can just cut them down and use them, so that's fine there. I think that's about it. Oh, the slave cylinder. We had to use a power bleeder to bleed the slave cylinder. We tried to bleed it by hand. It would not work. We used a power bleeder on it. So you guys might remember that. You need to borrow a power bleeder from a buddy or rent one from the tool store or whatever, or if you have one, you can use it. But you're going to have a power bleeder to bleed the slave cylinder because it's not going to bleed if you don't. And here's a bottom view of that bracket that holds the transmission cables in place. I don't know how well you can see those cables, but they're... This one out here has got a pretty sharp bend on it, but the one in here has got a really sharp bend. It goes almost just like that, basically. So that's why we moved that bracket to the front where it says OEM, just to give us a little bit more space so it would be quite as sharp as bend. It seems to be working okay. Now, there's something else I want to tell you. Before you put these clutch cables in, make sure you spray some lubrication down inside the housing because they aren't lubricated at all. And as tight as these bends are, we took these cables and sprayed some lubrication down inside of them, and they work a lot better now than they did before we did that. So you might want to spray some silicone or some sort of light oil or grease down inside those cables to get them to work properly. So anyhow, that's where we're at today on this thing. I got the covers made. There's the covers down there. We got them painted with POR 15, so we're going to put those covers on the firewall. We'll cover it up. And we've had it running a couple times today. You guys heard it start yesterday, so it does run. There's a little bit of a concern with the fuel tank on it as far as it being dirty, because it was dirty, but we drained all the fuel out. We cleaned it out as best we can, and people were saying, well, you can't get all that stuff out of it. But the bottom line is it's got a plastic liner in there, and the pump sits inside that plastic liner. And if there's any scale or rust on the outside of that container, it can't get to the pump, so it's not going to pull it into the system anyhow, so it should be fine. It's got a strainer. We put a new strainer on the pump, so it should do a good job of filtering out any particles. So I think it'll be fine. If you're really worried about it, you could always put an inline filter in it, in the fuel line, the fuel rail, so you could do that too. But I think we're just going to leave it the way it is. I think it's going to be fine. Run a couple tanks of gas through it, get fresh gas in. I think it'll be good to go. So that's where we're at, and I appreciate you guys watching. And we'll keep working on it, and any other updates I have on it, I'll put them on here, and we'll just keep going. And if you got any questions, feel free to ask. And thanks for watching my channel. I appreciate it. Bye.